there's a lot here.
It is.
Do you?
It is.
Yeah, Greg.
I mean,
Yeah, Greg.
yeah, Greg, no, the floor is yours. Do you put more blame on Rodgers or McCarthy for the situation in Green Bay?
Look, that's the question everybody wants to know. And I think for me, they both share blame. But in this, the fall, what they weren't able to accomplish together, I have to put more blame, honestly, on Coach McCarthy in this instance. And because I was in that locker room when we were having the success that we were having, and then to see the things that we weren't able to do, the frustration, it stemmed because of, I wouldn't call it a complacency, but I would say an arrogance, honestly, of Coach McCarthy believing that what I roll out there is going to always work. One quote he would say all the time, he would just make this statement, and it became a quote, basically. We can play double headers. We can play a double header right now. I'm sure you heard coaches say that. With the same plays. I shouldn't have to call anything else. We can play a double header right now. And the reality of that is you can play a double header. But how much more challenging are you making it on your players when you're not being creative and innovative, when you're not willing to listen to input and kind of tailor things to the talent that's in your room, that you have on your roster? That was the struggle. I just recall in games where, yes, rightfully so, Aaron would grow frustrated because you're talking about, and I'm very critical of Aaron, and I'm not saying he's not to blame.
You have been.
He definitely plays his role in this, but when it comes to being on that football field and making plays, Aaron Rodgers has always been able to do that. And one thing that I feel has limited him in his ability has been Mike McCarthy in allowing him to just go. And I get it. As a head coach, do you need to manage a guy like Aaron Rodgers? Yes. But he started out, I believe, managing Aaron Rodgers pretty well. But I think what happened was Aaron knew it was only going to be a matter of time because his ability was going to outlast and outperform and kind of outgrow what was in front of him as far as scheme.
Wow.
And the more Mike McCarthy switched defensive coordinators, the more Aaron absorbed from the different schemes defensively, and he learned how to decipher and literally doctor and just depict defenses, pick them apart because of what he was able to absorb from all these different defensive coordinators. It allowed him to grow at an escalated rate. And so I think that kind of jumped in McCarthy's face like, whoa, I'm dealing with a guy who is extremely smart now, who I've given all this knowledge to, that now his skill set and what I'm able to provide for him, he doesn't feel like I'm giving him enough. And quite frankly, being in that locker room, I grew frustrated with the play calls that time. I voiced it. Like, what are we doing? Because when we would get leads, we saw it years ago in the NFC Championship game against Seattle, where it just grew stale. There was no aggressiveness play calling where there should have been. And I think that's what kind of allowed this relationship to just continue to go south. There's a lot of other things that are mentioned in this article that allude to that as well. And I think one of the things off top that Ryan Grant alluded to with Aaron Rodgers not being drafted #1 overall and Mike McCarthy being in
San Francisco that wanted Alex Smith over him.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers would bring that up.
Oh, he petty.
Ever so politely in our meetings.
Yeah.
As a shot.
It wasn't.
Oh yeah, you mean that guy that you took over me? And so this is the type of quarterback that Mike McCarthy was dealing with. Very talented, but his recall and his sensitivity was at an all-time high.
Wow.
By the way, you did win a Super Bowl together. All of you. It worked one time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so you got to give it that.
Yes. And don't get me wrong.
But you're upset because it should have been more.
It should have been more. I think everyone knows there was so many opportunities that we missed. And this doesn't all fall on Mike McCarthy, but I think he does bear the most blame here because if you look at, and again, the only other team that we will find to compare this to is New England. Mm-hmm. Because Belichick has dealt with one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, if not the greatest quarterback of all time. And he's managed that relationship and always kept the number one thing, winning.
But the difference was Belichick does the defense and Tom basically runs the offense. This is the coordinator of the offense. That's a huge difference. Is the head coach.
And so there's going to be a clash.
Yep.
At the pinnacle, because what you want us to do is what you're putting out there because you're the head coach. But I have to run this. And I'm that dude being Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And when I do it my way in 2 minutes, it looks a lot better. It looks a lot more entertaining. We progress down the field. Things happen. We get results a lot quicker. And I think that was a lot of you make a good point there. There was a lot of clash because they're on the same side of the ball.
Coaching great players is not easy.
No.
Whether you're an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach, because when you coach a great player, Skip, when he asks you information, you got to give it to him on site. Aaron Rodgers did not respect Mike McCarthy because, as the article says, he felt he had a low IQ. So he felt that the questions that he could ask, Mike McCarthy didn't have.
Just reiterate that. I'd never heard this before, that he thought Mike McCarthy had the lowest IQ of any coach he'd ever experienced.
Right.
That's a deal breaker right there.
But Skip, this is not the first time we've heard that Coach McCarthy would send plays in, and Aaron Rodgers would roll his eyes while he was in the huddle. So this is not the first time that we're hearing this.
Stupid effing call.
So, as you said, okay, I remember totally telling Mike, I'm open. He's like, well, you need to tell John.
Mike
Shannon. So I said, I will remember that. So if John calls a play, I don't care what you call. He called it. I'm running what he calls. Because you told me before, listen to him and tell him to throw me the ball. So when you send a play in and I don't run the play that you called and he told me to run this, guess what I'm running? Skip, Aaron Rodgers, I did a piece on the Packers. And I was just walking around. I'm looking at him. I'm talking to people, getting the feel.
When was this?
This had to be. This might have been 2011, 2010.
For CBS?
For CBS. Okay. Yeah, I came in there and I talked to Greg, I talked to Donald Driver, talked to Jordy Nelson, and I'm just talking, and I throw out his name. Nobody really wants to say anything. Okay. So Skip, I'm just walking around, I'm looking at him, and everybody was like, I said, oh, I see. I say, this is the type of guy that no matter if it's his fault, it's really your fault.
Yep.
And you got to take responsibility even when it's not your fault. But Mike McCarthy, let me tell you something you can't do. You can't ask your players to do something that you're unwilling to do. Never ask a man more than you're willing to give yourself.
Yep.
You can't expect your players to be on time if you're late. What kind of bull job is that?
That's outrageous.
Yeah, what kind of bull job is that?
You're getting a massage, missing a meeting?
I never experienced that. Right? I never experienced that. I had heard it, but... That's just a bad look.
Was it a Thai massage? Oh, my man, Skip, I slipped. That's slip, Skip. That's slip, Skip. That's slip. You don't slip in the tongue, ain't nobody.
It's live TV, Shannon.
Oh, my man. Oh, I said that. I was just thinking it.
Back to the real world.
Yeah.
I'm dumbfounded by this whole thing. It's beyond toxic. And my first point is, if Aaron Rodgers could not get past that Mike McCarthy was the offensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers when they chose Alex Smith, if you can't move past that, it's
never going to work.
It's doomed.
Nope.
If that's going to stick in your craw, deep in your craw, that you're going to hold that against him at every turn, every play call, everything that goes wrong, even if it's mostly your fault, you're going to blame him for it. It is doomed, and somebody upstairs needed to cut bait from the start. And you know how I feel. I'm always going to side with the franchise quarterback because he's virtually irreplaceable.
Yes,
of course.
The coach is replaceable. But there were many years when, I did not cover the Packers. I didn't even go do one story on the Packers. But I would hear, this was almost like like it became a cliche, that Mike McCarthy, one of the best play callers in pro football. I heard that several of those glory years in there.
Okay.
Is that true? I don't know. It looked good to me because it was really working at a high level for those 2 or 3 years in there that you experienced, right? It won a Super Bowl. Was he a good play caller that day in the Super Bowl? What happened on 3rd and 10 from the 25 late in that game when he threw a rocket to you on a kind of a post, or wasn't it just a post? That iced the game, right? Okay.
Yep,
what was that a good call? Was it a good play? Do you remember what the play call was? Did it work? Yeah.
It worked. It worked. Was it a good play call?
We're looking
I mean,
at that right
you
there.
can't say it wasn't a good play call because it worked.
Right.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Anything that works.
Anything that works, it's a good play call.
Do you remember hearing the play in the huddle thinking, that'll work?
Well, I remember hearing the play in the huddle, and we went up to the line, and then we got a false start, and then we had to go back 5 more yards, and then we came back with the same play, and Aaron just looked like, I'm coming to you. So when that happens, it's not a matter of the play call is like, it's done. It's like you just win your one-on-one matchup.
Okay, trust me, when I did cover the Dallas Cowboys of the 90s, Norv Turner told me repeatedly, I got the simplest playbook in football because I got the best team. I got the best offensive line. I got Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman, and they would gladly have played doubleheaders and just kept running the same plays because they would beat you to death with the same plays. Right. But they were superiorly talented all across the ball.
Skip, you mentioned that Aaron, and the articles, and Greg, you spoke to this, that he kept bringing it up, that somehow he couldn't get past that Mike McCarthy was the offensive coordinator on the 49ers that selected Alex Smith #1 overall.
So it wasn't Mike's call.
Yeah, Mike Nolan was the head coach, and there were higher-ups over than him. But even after a Super Bowl MVP and 2 regular seasons MVP, it still gnawed at him that much that he viewed that as an unforgivable. Right. So no matter what we accomplish, that's how much it meant to him. He wanted to be the #1 overall because there's a little prestige that goes with that.
Sure.
You know, you're the #1. I mean, there's only been 53 of those. So, hey.
It was actually the best thing that ever happened to Aaron because it drove him like crazy.
But hold on. He didn't know it.
No.
He didn't know that was the best thing to happen. Sometimes it's not when you go, it's where you go. You got an opportunity to sit on the bench behind Brett Favre, and you didn't have nearly the expectations that Alex Smith. You're a savior. You're the #1 overall pick, Skip. Yep. You are especially at quarterback, you are the savior.
Yep.
But, man, Aaron got some bad, Skip. It's not easy. I told you, these guys, and I keep telling people, you don't know. Quarterbacks, franchise quarterbacks are the most selfish, the most thin-skinned of any position player. The only thing they do better than the diva receiver, they hide it.
Yeah. They do.
They hide it. But you can't fool those shit. I played 14 years, and I've been around a bunch of them. I know them.
Okay, bottom line to this. Aaron's had, by his standards, 2 bad or off years.
Yes.
So now he's got Matt LaHoo as his head coach. So this guy's like going to become irrelevant because now Aaron's in charge here. So he is on a hot seat going into next year. This is a big year for Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely.